I thought we were building a family. She was building an escape plan. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Fractured Promises for more shocking true stories. Now let's begin. Ethan locked the front door and stepped into the cozy living room, a soft smile on his face. The glow of evening light filtered through the curtains as he placed his keys on the entryway table. Home? This was where he felt happiest, envisioning the future he and Claire were building together. In their late 20s and married for 3 years, they often talked about buying a house and starting a family soon. Ethan felt a swell of warmth at the thought. He truly believed they were a team preparing for the next chapter of life. Claire's laughter floated in from the kitchen as she chatted on the phone. Ethan paused in the doorway, watching her stir a pot on the stove with one hand while holding her phone to her ear with the other. She looked radiant chestnut hair in a casual bun, wearing his oversized college hoodie as she cooked. The sight warmed Ethan's heart. This is what it's all about, he thought. Home-cooked meals, lazy weekends, planning for the future together. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but a fragment of her conversation caught his attention. I'll handle it. Yes, don't worry, Claire was saying quietly. When she noticed Ethan in the doorway, she gave a small start. Quickly, she added into the phone, I've got to go. Talk later, and ended the call with a tap. For an instant, Ethan saw something like alarm flicker in her brown eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came. You're back early, Claire greeted, her tone cheerful but a touch strained. She set the phone aside on the counter. How was work? Ethan stepped forward to hug her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. It was fine. Got out a bit early, thought I'd surprise you. He peered playfully into the pot on the stove. Smells good. Is that your famous pasta sauce? Claire relaxed into his embrace and smiled, though he felt her shoulders were a little tense. It is. And there's garlic bread in the oven, almost done. She turned her head to kiss his cheek. At that familiar gesture, Ethan felt reassured. Any passing worry from her hushed phone call dissipated. Claire frequently chatted with friends or family, and it wasn't his business to pry. As they set the table together, Ethan brought up an idea he'd been mulling over. So I was thinking, maybe we could start looking at houses soon, he said, trying to sound casual. We've saved up a decent amount for a down payment, and it might be a good time to buy? Claire's hand paused for a fraction of a second as she placed 2 plates down. She kept her back to him and responded lightly, Already house hunting? Her tone was breezy, but Ethan noticed she didn't echo his enthusiasm. Well, not if you're not ready, he added quickly. It was just an idea. We don't have to rush if you'd rather wait. Claire turned around with a faint smile. It's not that I don't want to. It's just, things are really busy at work for me right now. A big project is coming up, and I might have to travel for a conference soon. Maybe we can hold off a few more months? I want to give house hunting the attention it deserves. Her explanation was reasonable. Ethan nodded, though a pinch of disappointment tugged at him. Of course. We'll do it when the time's right. She smiled more genuinely and patted his arm. Exactly. We'll get there. Just not this very moment. Claire returned to the kitchen to fetch the pasta and bread. They sat down to dinner together. The conversation flowed easily at first, but as the meal went on, Ethan sensed Claire's focus drifting. She grew quiet and fidgety, responding with only nods or murmurs as he told a funny story from work. Hey, everything okay? He asked gently, twirling spaghetti on his fork. You seem a little distracted tonight, Claire blinked, then shook her head as if clearing it. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I'm just a bit tired, she gave an apologetic smile. It's been a long week, and it's only Wednesday. Ethan reached across the table to squeeze her hand. It's all right. We can have a quiet night. Maybe watch an episode of that show we like and turn in early. She brightened slightly at that. That sounds perfect after dinner. Ethan insisted on doing the dishes while Claire went to curl up on the couch for a moment's rest. As he rinsed plates, he stole a glance at her in the living room. She was scrolling through her phone, face illuminated by the screen's glow. At one point, he noticed her thumb flying over the glass, typing something quickly before she locked the phone and set it face down on the coffee table. When he joined her on the sofa, Claire nestled against his side. They put on a light-hearted sitcom, and for a while it felt like old times, her laughter coming freely at the jokes, her head resting on his shoulder. Ethan felt a wave of contentment. Maybe he had imagined the earlier tension. Everyone had off days, and Claire did seem genuinely tired. About 20 minutes into the show, Claire's phone buzzed against the wooden table with a muted hum. Ethan felt her body tense. She leaned forward to grab the phone, a frown crossing her face as she glanced at the notification. "Work message?" Ethan asked lightly, noticing the furrow in her brow. Sort of," Claire murmured. Without meeting his eyes, she stood up. "Sorry, I need to respond to this." "It's about that project I mentioned." Before he could say anything, she was already walking toward the kitchen, phone in hand. She kept her back to him as she began typing. Over the noise of the TV, Ethan caught her voice, low and urgent on the phone. A prickling feeling of concern nagged at Ethan. It was unusual for work to bother her so late. Claire's office job as a marketing coordinator normally kept to business hours. Maybe this big project was an exception? Finally, he muted the TV, straining to hear her voice. She was deliberately speaking quietly, which only made him more anxious. After a couple of minutes, Claire returned. She gave a quick smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sorry about that. I think I'm too tired to keep watching. Rain check on the rest of the episode?" Ethan muted the TV, studying her face. She did look weary and something else he couldn't quite place. "Is everything all right? You sure it's just work stuff?" She rubbed the back of her neck and sighed. "Yeah, it's nothing to worry about, just a deadline that got moved up. I'll probably go in early tomorrow to deal with it." Ethan nodded slowly. She seemed anxious, but he decided not to press further. Everyone handles stress differently, he reminded himself. Claire had always been the type to internalize her worries. They headed upstairs. While Claire showered, Ethan climbed into bed and idly scrolled through his phone. Part of him was tempted to peek at her social media or messages, not to spy, just to reassure himself everything was fine. He immediately felt guilty for even considering it. "Don't be silly," he chided himself. "She's never given you a real reason to doubt her." When Claire emerged from the bathroom in her pajamas, hair damp and fragrant with shampoo, Ethan smiled and opened his arms. She slipped into bed and curled up against him. "No, you're warm?" she murmured sleepily. He kissed the top of her head. "Love you, Claire," he whispered. "Love you too," she replied softly. Within minutes, Claire's breathing evened out in sleep. Ethan, however, lay awake a while longer. In the quiet darkness of their bedroom, he replayed the evening in his mind, the hushed phone call, the way she tensed at that text, her hesitation about house hunting. None of it was alarming on its own. Still, as he drifted off, Ethan couldn't shake a faint sense of unease. If you were in Ethan's place, would you ignore Claire's strange behavior? Or start looking for answers? Tell me in the comments, I'm curious what you'd do. Over the next couple of weeks, Ethan began to notice other little changes in Claire's behavior. They were subtle on the surface, easy to dismiss individually, but together they formed a pattern he couldn't ignore. Claire, who used to leave her phone casually on the coffee table or kitchen counter, now kept it with her at all times. She took calls in a different room, her voice hushed and unreadable behind closed doors. When he'd ask who it was, she would shrug and say, "Just work," or, "Oh, that was Jenna. She needed advice about something," referring to her best friend. The excuses were perfectly plausible, yet something in her delivery felt off, a flicker in her eyes, an instant too long before she answered. Claire also started coming home later than usual. Twice that week she texted him in the late afternoon saying, "Don't wait up for dinner. I have to work late." On one of those nights, Ethan had decided to surprise her at the office with her favorite takeout, thinking a hot meal might cheer her up during her overtime. He took the elevator up to her department, heart thumping with nervous excitement. When the elevator doors opened, though, the office was mostly dark. Only a couple of desk lamps were still on in the gloom. Confused, Ethan approached the one occupied cubicle he could find, a young man wearing headphones. The man looked up as Ethan cleared his throat. "Hi, I'm looking for Claire Thompson." She's my wife. I thought she was working late tonight. The employee pulled off his headphones and gave a polite, puzzled smile. Oh, Claire. She left a few hours ago. Around 5, I think. Most of the team did. There wasn't anything scheduled late today. Ethan felt the floor tilt beneath him for a second. Right? Maybe I misunderstood, he managed, forcing a smile. Thanks. He walked back to his car with the untouched takeout cooling in his hand and a leaden weight in his stomach. She had told him she'd be working late, even texted that she might be home past 9. It was only 7 o'clock now. Where had she been for the past 2 hours? Where was she at that very moment? On the drive home, Ethan tried to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in his head. There had to be an explanation, he told himself. Maybe she'd felt sick and left early, then stopped somewhere to rest and just hadn't had the chance to tell him yet. Or perhaps the project's schedule changed last minute, and she took the opportunity to cut out early and decompress somewhere. Claire did sometimes take a solo walk or drive to clear her mind after a hard day. Yes, that had to be it, he thought, clinging to that hopeful idea. When Claire finally came home around 9:30 that night, Ethan was waiting in the living room, the cold takeout container on the coffee table. Hearing the front door, he stood up, heart pounding with a mix of relief and nervousness. She looked surprised to see him still up. Oh, hey, she said softly, hanging her purse on the hook. She looked a bit disheveled. A few strands of hair had come loose from her bun, and there was a slight flush on her cheeks. Why are you still awake? I could ask you the same question, Ethan replied, attempting to keep his tone light. How was work? Everything okay with the project? Claire hesitated only a second. Yeah, just a tiring day. I told you not to wait up, didn't I? She offered him a tired smile and stepped forward to give him a quick hug. She smelled faintly of wine and... Was that cigarette smoke? Claire didn't smoke, and as far as he knew, neither did her closest friends. Ethan's stomach tightened. I wanted to surprise you, he said, pulling back to search her face. He gestured to the takeout on the table. I dropped by your office with dinner, but you had already left. Claire's eyes widened slightly. For a second, fear flashed in her eyes before her expression shifted into a frown. You went to my office? Her voice held a note of irritation under the surprise. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. I was worried you were overworking, and I thought some pad thai from Lotus Garden would make you happy. Your coworker said you left around 5. She stepped away, busying herself by shrugging off her coat and draping it over the couch. Ethan, I had a splitting headache late this afternoon. I tried to stick it out, but I couldn't. I left work and went for a drive to clear my head and maybe get some air. Then I realized I was near the waterfront, so I stopped and took a walk. I should have called, but I figured you'd assume I just stayed late as planned. She bit her lip, eyes pleading now. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you. A walk by the waterfront for nearly 4 hours? Ethan struggled to hide his skepticism. It was a chilly evening, not exactly ideal for a long stroll outdoors, and the scent of wine and smoke still lingered in his mind. But confronting her with those details might come off as accusatory, and he wasn't ready to start a fight. I was worried, he admitted, keeping his tone gentle. Next time, just send me a text or something, okay? So I know you're safe. Claire nodded and took his hands in hers. You're right. I should have. I'm sorry, her fingers were cold against his. I've been so stressed, Ethan. Between the project and everything else, I feel like I can't breathe sometimes. Driving and walking alone helps me clear my mind. Ethan looked into her eyes, seeing tears welling up now. His frustration and suspicion wavered, replaced by guilt. Maybe he was overthinking all this. She sounded sincere, and he hated that he'd made her upset. It's okay, he murmured, squeezing her hands. I understand. I'm sorry I showed up like that and made you feel pressured. Claire shook her head, a tear spilling down her cheek. No, you were just being sweet. I feel terrible that I worried you. Thank you for thinking of me. She glanced at the takeout container and managed a weak laugh. That was really thoughtful. I'm sorry it went to waste. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, and after a moment she hugged him back tightly. Her heart was pounding as hard as his. The embrace felt fraught with unspoken tension. "It's all right," he whispered into her hair. "As long as you're okay, that's what matters." They headed upstairs together. Ethan hoped the worst of his anxiety was behind him. Claire's explanation, while odd, could be true. She might have had a minor breakdown from stress. He knew how hard she worked and how she sometimes needed solitude to cope. And yet, as he lay in bed watching her drift off to sleep that night, doubt gnawed at him. In the stillness, he replayed the evening in his head. The contradictory details, the unusual smells on her clothes, the flash of fear when he mentioned her office, ... There was more to that story, he was almost certain. Claire had never lied to him before, had she? He wanted to believe her so badly that it hurt. Ethan rolled over and stared at the ceiling. If something was truly wrong, if she was unhappy, she would tell him, right? They were partners. He closed his eyes, willing himself to accept her story. But in the darkness, he could only picture Claire's distant expression and hear the hollow ring of her apology. Something was wrong, even if he couldn't name it yet. And he feared that, whatever it was growing between them, widening a quiet gulf that love alone might not bridge. The following weekend, Ethan's unease had morphed into a quiet resolve. He could no longer dismiss the nagging feeling that something was very wrong. Claire's behavior remained affectionate on the surface, but there was a distance he couldn't bridge. She spent more time running errands on her own and frequently mentioned being swamped with work, yet seemed evasive when he offered help or asked for details. Each little lie or half-truth chipped away at his trust. Ethan realized that if he wanted answers, he'd have to seek them himself. Late Saturday afternoon, Claire was getting ready to meet Jenna for dinner and drinks. As she stood in front of the mirror, applying a touch of lipstick, Ethan watched from the bedroom doorway. She was dressed up more than usual for a casual outing with a close friend, a pretty blue blouse and slim jeans, a spritz of her expensive perfume. It struck him that she always used that perfume on special occasions. His gut twisted. Still, he managed to smile when she caught his eye in the mirror. "You look nice." "Tell Jenna I said hi," he said, trying to sound normal. Claire turned, giving a quick twirl of her hair into a loose braid. "Will do. Don't wait up, okay?" "I might be late." He nodded, heart pounding. "Have fun." Love you too," she called, already heading downstairs. As soon as Ethan heard the garage door open and Claire's car back out, he grabbed his jacket and keys. His hands trembled, adrenaline coursing through him. If he was wrong about this, he told himself he'd feel like a fool. But if he was right, he didn't want to finish that thought. He just needed to know the truth. He slid into his own car, which he'd parked down the street earlier to avoid tipping her off. Pulling out quietly, he kept a good distance as Claire's taillights turned the corner at the end of the block. The evening light was fading, and Ethan flicked on his headlights, careful to stay far enough behind. This suburban cat-and-mouse game sent his pulse racing. Claire drove across town, not toward the restaurant where Jenna usually liked to go, but toward the waterfront district. Ethan's mouth went dry as he followed. The waterfront was known for its trendy bistros and hotels with scenic views of the bay. It was also where she'd claimed to take that long walk during her headache episode. A heavy ache settled in Ethan's chest at the memory. After a while, Claire's car slowed and turned into a parking lot of a cozy-looking restaurant, the Seaside Lantern. Its sign glowed warmly in the dusk. Ethan coasted to a stop half a block away, parking on the street. He watched as Claire stepped out of her car and smoothed her blouse. A moment later, another figure emerged from the shadows near the restaurant entrance and walked up to her. A tall man in a charcoal sport coat. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the familiarity in the way the man greeted her, how Claire smiled up at him, how naturally his hand found the small of her back as they went inside. Ethan's stomach lurched. The image blurred in his eyes. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Part of him wanted to charge out of the car, burst into that restaurant and demand answers. Demand to know who this stranger was and why his wife was looking at him with that gentle, bashful expression she used to reserve for Ethan alone. But another part of Ethan, trembling and heartbroken, couldn't move. Not yet. Instead, he forced himself to breathe and got out of his car slowly, carefully. He crossed the street and approached the seaside lantern. Through the large front windows, he could see the intimate dining area inside, lit by flickering candlelight at each table. It didn't take long to spot them. Claire and the man were seated at a corner table, leaning toward each other. Claire's face was animated and bright. She was laughing, eyes shining at the man. The man reached across the table to place his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. A cold evening breeze swept down the street, but Ethan stood rooted on the sidewalk, numb. His mind struggled to process the scene playing out before him like a cruel movie. The truth was unmistakable now. Claire was with another man, sharing a romantic dinner where she should have been with her husband or her friend. She had lied to Ethan's face and was betraying everything they had built. Ethan fumbled for his phone and, with shaking fingers, snapped a photo through the window. He wasn't even sure what perhaps part of him needed tangible proof of this nightmare. The phone camera click felt surreal. Neither Claire nor her companion noticed, too absorbed in each other. He couldn't watch any longer. Heart hammering in his chest, Ethan stumbled back to his car. Once inside, with the door shut, the reality hit him like a tidal wave. His vision blurred with tears he had been holding back. A ragged sob tore from his throat before he could stop it. He clamped a hand over his mouth, afraid that even alone in his car, someone might hear the sounds of him breaking. For a long minute, Ethan sat in darkness, tears streaming as he stared blankly ahead. Image after image flooded his mind. Claire's secretive smiles at her phone, the nights she claimed to work late, the scent of wine on her clothes, the guarded phone calls. All of it now made devastating sense. While he'd been dreaming of their future, Claire had been planning her escape. Eventually, the initial storm of emotion gave way to a steely, sorrowful calm. Ethan wiped his face on his sleeve. It wasn't just pain he felt now, but anger deep and smoldering. He deserved answers. He deserved better than this deceit. Gathering himself, Ethan looked at the photo on his phone one more time, confirming it was clear enough to recognize her. His hand shook a little less now. With a resolute breath, he started the car and drove off, leaving the glow of the restaurant behind. He had seen enough. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same. Imagine standing outside and watching the person you love laughing with someone else. What would you do in that moment? Walk in and confront them, or walk away in silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. Pretending everything was normal around Claire in the days that followed was one of the hardest things Ethan had ever done. Each morning he woke beside her, he had to resist the urge to recoil from her gentle good morning kisses, knowing they were laced with lies. He responded in kind, forcing smiles and casual conversation, all while something hollow ached in his chest. Claire, for her part, seemed oblivious to his inner turmoil. Or perhaps she was simply too preoccupied with her own agenda to notice anything amiss. She continued her routine of secretive texts and calls. If anything, she acted even more cheerful and attentive, perhaps out of guilt. She even brought him coffee in bed one day, chatting cheerfully as if she hadn't been in another man's arms just nights ago. Ethan played along, nodding and even laughing at the right moments, all the while feeling like he was watching a stranger wear his wife's face. On Tuesday evening, a few days after he'd seen her with the man at the seaside lantern, Claire mentioned her upcoming work trip. They were cleaning up after dinner when she said in an offhand tone, "Remember that conference I told you about? It's this Friday. I'll be flying out early in the morning and back Monday night." She kept her eyes on the sink as she spoke. "It's a pretty important one for my career. Lots of big names in the industry." Ethan dried a plate slowly, watching her carefully. "Friday, huh? You need a ride to the airport?" Claire glanced over her shoulder with a quick smile. "Oh no, don't worry. The company arranged a car to pick me up. It's really early, I wouldn't want you to have to deal with that." "All right," Ethan said evenly. "If you're sure." Later that night, with Claire asleep, Ethan opened his laptop in the study. His hands were steady now, fueled by a grim purpose. First, he logged into the online banking they shared. His heart thumped as the account summary loaded. What he saw made him inhale sharply. Several large transfers out of their joint savings, all in the past month. Claire had been siphoning money. Nearly $20,000 was gone, moved to an account he didn't recognize. Ethan clenched his jaw. He proceeded to transfer the remaining funds into a new account under his name only. If she was planning to drain him financially on her way out, she'd find nothing left to grab. He also quietly removed her access to their joint credit card by reporting it lost and requesting a new card for himself. These steps felt cold, but necessary. His trust in Claire was shattered. Now he had to protect himself. Next, he turned to the matter of evidence and information. The photo on his phone was safely backed up, but he wanted to know more about her plans. Was this trip truly an escape? He suspected she didn't intend to come back on Monday if she even went to a conference at all. Ethan recalled that Claire sometimes saved important documents on their home computer. Navigating to the shared desktop PC, he searched for any recently modified files. Sure enough, he found a PDF titled itinerary.pdf in a folder she thought only she used. Opening it, his suspicions were confirmed. It was a flight itinerary for Friday morning, departing to a city halfway across the country. Digging deeper, Ethan found an email backup file and searched within it for keywords. His breath caught when an email thread popped up between Claire and someone named Michael R. The content left his hands shaking with rage and heartbreak anew. In the exchange, Claire wrote, "I can't wait for this weekend. Everything is set. I'll have the money and documents. Thank you for getting the apartment ready." The reply from Michael read, "Of course. New job, new city, new life together. I promise it'll all be worth it. You just get here, I'll handle the rest." Ethan closed his eyes, the betrayal driving in even deeper. Not only was she leaving him for another man, but she had arranged a whole new life and apartment. Possibly a job, the new job mentioned, while stringing Ethan along in a fantasy of a shared future. The conference was a cover for her escape plan with Michael. For a long moment, he sat in the dark study, email window open and illuminating his stony expression. The love he had for Claire was still there, tangled with agony, but it was rapidly being overtaken by a resolve. He would not let her walk all over him. If she wanted out, she could have asked for a divorce honestly. This deceit was a choice, and it deserved consequences. The next day, Ethan took off work under the guise of feeling ill. In reality, he quietly met with a divorce attorney that day. Given the circumstances and evidence, the lawyer promised swift action. Ethan made sure the papers would be ready by Thursday night, so he could choose the moment of confrontation. He didn't plan to give Claire the satisfaction of slipping away quietly into a new life. She was going to face what she'd done. By Thursday, Ethan had everything in place. Financial accounts were secured, legal documents prepared, evidence tucked safely away. He had replayed in his mind 100 times how their confrontation might go, alternating between rage and sorrow in those private moments. Now, as he sat across from Claire at dinner that evening, he studied her for what he knew might be one of the last calm nights they would ever spend together. Claire chattered on about mundane topics, oblivious to the storm brewing behind his eyes. Ethan only half listened, murmuring agreement here and there. He wondered if she had any inkling that the facade was about to crumble. If the slight tremor in his hand as he lifted his water glass betrayed him, she gave no sign. She was either supremely confident in her deception or too distracted by anticipation of her new life to notice. That night, as Claire double-checked her packed suitcase and laid out her travel clothes for the early flight, Ethan stood in the doorway of their bedroom and watched quietly. His heart was pounding, but his voice, when he spoke, came out remarkably even. "All set for tomorrow?" he asked. She jumped slightly, turning to face him with a suitcase lock in her hand. "Oh, you scared me." "Yeah, I think I have everything." He just nodded. For an instant, his composure nearly cracked. He felt an almost overwhelming urge to ask why. Why she was doing this. But he swallowed it down. He would get his answers soon enough. Ethan forced a small smile. "Good, safe travels, Claire." "Thank you," she replied softly, perhaps mistaking the huskiness in his voice for emotion at parting. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him in a hug. "I'll miss you," she said into his chest. His throat tightened. He carefully returned the hug, holding her for a moment and wondering if she could feel how hard his heart was beating. "I'll miss you too," he managed to say. It wasn't entirely a lie. He would miss the woman he thought she was. But that woman was already gone, replaced by someone willing to abandon their life together. Tomorrow, at the moment Claire believed she would escape, Ethan would be there to confront her with the truth. Neither of them would be able to pretend any longer. Friday dawned cool and gray. By 5 a.m., the sky was only beginning to lighten, a pale glow peeking over the horizon. Ethan was already awake, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, heart thudding a steady drumbeat of anticipation and dread. Downstairs, he heard Claire bustling about, quietly preparing to leave. This was it. He moved to the living room and positioned himself by the front door, a man standing guard at the threshold of his own life. In one hand, he held a slim folder containing the divorce papers and a printout of the incriminating emails. In the other, he clenched his phone with the photo from the restaurant queued up on screen. His evidence, his ammunition? Claire appeared at the bottom of the stairs, rolling her suitcase behind her. She was dressed smartly in business casual attire, a blazer over that blue blouse he'd seen her wear on her date with Michael. The sight of it made Ethan's jaw tighten. Still, he remained eerily calm on the outside. Claire jumped when she saw him by the door. Clearly, she hadn't expected him up at this hour. "You scared me," she exclaimed softly, pressing a hand to her chest. "I was trying not to wake you. You should go back to bed." "It's so early." She attempted a bright, casual smile, but her eyes flickered with surprise and dot. Was it a hint of fear? Ethan didn't move aside from the door. "Morning," he said quietly. "Going somewhere?" She blinked rapidly. Yes. I told you, the conference ... Her voice faltered as she noticed his stony expression. The suitcase wheels clicked against the hardwood as she subconsciously edged back a few inches. "My car will be here any minute." "I really should get going," Ethan inhaled slowly. The moment felt surreal, a split screen between the ordinary and the catastrophic. "I think we need to talk first," he said, voice low but firm. Claire let out a nervous little laugh. "Can it wait?" "I'll miss my flight." "There's not going to be a flight," Ethan replied, lifting his phone and turning the screen toward her. It displayed the photo of her and Michael holding hands at the seaside lantern. "Not for you." "Not today." Time seemed to freeze. Claire's eyes locked on the phone screen and all color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. In the early morning silence, Ethan could hear the faint hum of blood rushing in his ears. "Ethan," she finally whispered, taking a step forward. I can explain." He kept the phone raised like a shield. "Explain what?" "That you've been lying to me for months? That while I was loving you and planning our future, you were planning your escape?" His voice trembled, despite his efforts to keep it steady. All the pain and anger he'd contained poured into those words. Claire's eyes welled with tears. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I never meant for you to find out this way." Ethan gave a short, bitter laugh. "That's what you're sorry for?" "That I found out? Not that you did it?" He shook his head, disbelief and hurt contorting his features. "Was any of it real, Claire? Our marriage, our plans to start a family. Was it all just a cover until you could run off with him?" She stepped forward again, one hand half raised as if she wanted to touch him, to beg. "It was real. At least it started that way," she said desperately. "I did love you, Ethan. I do. I swear I do. I just ... A sob cut off her words. He didn't lower the phone. Behind Claire, through the window, he saw a car pull up in front of the house, presumably the hired car service. They were running out of time. Fine by him. He wanted this done. "How long?" he asked coldly. "How long have you been seeing him?" Claire wiped her cheeks with a trembling hand. "About 6 months," she croaked. "It just ... happened. I never planned to hurt you." 6 months, Ethan repeated, the number stabbing at him. "Half a year of lies." He clenched his jaw to keep his composure. So, every night you came home and kissed me, every time you said you loved me, you'd already given your heart to someone else. No, that's not true, she insisted, voice breaking. I never planned for this to happen, but Michael made me feel alive again. Ethan felt like she'd slapped him. He took a step back, swallowing hard. And I made you feel dead inside, is that it? No, Claire cried. It's not your fault. I'm the one who messed up. You've been nothing but good to me. This is about my issues, my fears. Her voice dropped. I was afraid of settling down, of having the life we talked about. I thought it was what I wanted, but when it came down to it, I panicked. Michael came along and I clung to him like a coward as an escape. Tears streamed down her face freely now. I didn't know how to tell you. You've always dreamed of the house, the kids, I just felt suffocated by it and I was too scared to tell you. Then the more I lied, the harder it became to be honest. So I thought leaving like this would spare you a confrontation. I thought maybe it'd be easier for both of us if I was just gone. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. Easier? You thought disappearing would be easier for me? Do you have any idea what that would have done to me? You were just going to vanish and leave me a letter or a text? How is that kinder than just telling me you were unhappy? She shook her head repeatedly. I was wrong, she sobbed. I see that now. I was a coward. I thought if I started a new life somewhere else, it would hurt less than facing you and admitting what I'd done. I was going to leave a letter explaining everything. I didn't have the courage to tell you face to face. I'm so sorry for a moment. The hallway was filled with only the sound of Claire's quiet sobbing and the distant idle engine of the car outside. Ethan's eyes burned, but he refused to let any tears fall now. He set his jaw and spoke with measured control. You know what hurts, Claire? You took the choice away from me. You lied to me every day, made me think we had a future while you were planning to end it without a word. You could have talked to me, tried counseling or an honest separation. But instead, you decided to make me a fool up until the last second. Claire reached toward him. I know, I was wrong. I can't excuse it. I didn't know how to fix it, so I ran from it. Please, Ethan. I'm so sorry. He finally lowered his phone, slipping it into his pocket. His hand then lifted the thin folder. Sorry isn't enough, he said, voice hardening. Maybe one day I'll find a way to forgive you for this, but it won't be today. He extended the folder toward her. I contacted a lawyer. These are divorce papers. I've already signed them. Claire's red-rimmed eyes widened anew. She looked at the folder as though it were a snake. Divorce? What did you expect? Ethan snapped, a flare of anger breaking through his veneer of calm. That I'd beg you to stay? That I'd fight Michael for you? He shook his head. No, you checked out of this marriage long ago. I'm just making it official. Her shoulders crumpled. Ethan, please? We don't have to do this. Maybe we can talk it through later. I'll call off the trip. I won't go. We can try to fix... Stop, he interrupted, his voice slicing through her plea. Don't insult me. You think because you got caught, now you want to patch things up? The time to work on our marriage was before you fell into someone else's arms, not after. Claire drew in a shaky breath. Outside, the car honked, a polite reminder of its presence. She flinched at the sound, fresh tears spilling. I ruined everything, she whispered. Ethan couldn't disagree. He felt strangely empty now, as if watching this scene from afar. Yes, he said quietly. You did. With trembling fingers, Claire accepted the divorce papers. She didn't even glance at them. Her eyes remained on Ethan, as if hoping for some mercy in his gaze. I really did love you, she said in a broken voice. I'm so sorry I... Loved me? Ethan repeated, bitterness sharp on his tongue. Don't rewrite history, Claire. If you loved me the way a wife should, we wouldn't be standing here. He stepped aside now, finally moving away from the door. Your ride's waiting. She looked at the open doorway, then back at him, anguish etched on her face. For a second, it seemed she might say something else, some final appeal. But in the end, she only nodded miserably. Clutching the divorce documents in one hand and her suitcase handle in the other, Claire walked to the door. Ethan watched with a mix of sorrow and grim resolution as she crossed the threshold. On the porch, she paused, half turning as if she expected him to call her back. He did not. Their eyes met one last time. Then Claire stepped into the chilly morning and gently closed the door behind her. 2 months later, the winter sun streamed through the windows of what had once been Ethan and Claire's living room. Now it was just Ethan's. The house felt emptier without her, but day by day he was learning to live with that emptiness and to fill it with new hope. The divorce was moving forward without contest. True to his word, Ethan had filed immediately. Claire signed everything, perhaps too ashamed to fight for anything more. She left town after that morning. Whether she flew to join Michael or went somewhere else, Ethan didn't know. He heard through a mutual acquaintance that she did end up in Michael City, living in that new apartment they had arranged. Beyond that, he chose not to seek details. That chapter of his life was closed. In the quiet aftermath, Ethan faced waves of hurt and anger that came and went. Some days he replayed their last conversation on a loop in his mind. Other days he woke up feeling strangely light, relieved that the painful deception was over. With support from friends and family, who rallied around him once they learned the truth, he began to heal. He even found a caring therapist to talk to make sense of the betrayal and help him trust again. One evening, Ethan stood in the spare room that he and Claire once thought might become a nursery someday. The thought didn't sting as sharply as it used to. He had cleared out the few items they'd stored there, turning the space into a small home office, a symbol of a new beginning. He realized that the family he had imagined building with Claire had been an illusion, but that didn't mean he would never have it. It only meant she would not be the one to share it with him. As he closed the door to that room, Ethan felt a sense of closure. Claire's betrayal had shattered his world, but it had not destroyed him. In the ruins of that broken trust, he found his own strength still intact. One day, he hoped, he would meet someone who valued that strength, someone who would build a future with him, not run from it. For now, he was at peace with letting go. The final divorce documents would be signed soon, legally ending what had already died the morning Claire walked out. Ethan stepped outside into the cold, crisp air of a new year, a mug of coffee warming his hands. The dawn sky was streaked with gold and pink, beautiful and alive. He breathed in deep, heart aching a little but hopeful. This wasn't the life he expected, but it was the life he had, and he intended to make the most of it, one day at a time.